Tomorrow in Queensland is when the state election will begin. The Premier will go to the Governor and then 26 days is how long the campaign goes until the final Saturday of the month. You know and I know how important this election is, and there was some interesting polling that came out today that said basically not much has changed when it came to the strength of the Labor Party in Brisbane. It's essentially maxed itself out last election. Things are sliding a little bit away from them in the coasts, which means they're not picking up really votes anywhere else. And the regions, things are getting worse for the Labor Party. Put simply, if you are watching us right now on Sky News On Win in regional Queensland, you will decide who the next government is. Your vote will decide whether Annastacia Palaszczuk can lose the 2 or more seats that will force her into a position that the Greens can't save her from. Now, the fake dance that both parties did today is exactly the same dance that Annastacia Palaszczuk did before she became Premier. Before she became Premier, there'd be no deals with minor parties. But then, of course, when it was a chance to become the Premier of Queensland, she did a deal with minor parties and she secured minority government. She is now pretending that she will not do the same if the Greens can save her ass come November.
No. Absolutely no. Absolutely no. No. I said no deals. I want a majority government. I need a majority government if I'm going to continue our job.
Well, the only job you're interested in is, of course, your job, because remember, Queensland, remember regional Queensland, your government, the Queensland government, despite telling you it's all about jobs and investment, has only created 179, count them, 179 full-time jobs in the past 12 months. The only jobs they create in the private sector, well, they're almost an accident. Deb Frecklington is also doing the same thing, pretending that, well, she wants a majority. And look, both sides will say this, but both sides will take power. That's what they're all about. When faced with it, they will do it and do it every single time.
Now, make no mistake, this decision does not mean that there have been any deals. There will be no deals. And it does not mean anything to do with those minor parties.
But let's be very clear. Regional Queensland will decide this election. If you decide to move your vote from the government to a minor party or the LNP, you will change the government. You will get a government that does not just endlessly obsess about the southeast. Very interestingly, though, most of the minor parties have said they are not going to be directing preferences. If you get a how to vote card from them, say if there's 5 candidates in a race, they'll say vote 1 for Katters Australia Party, One Nation or the Palmer United Party, and then it's up to you to decide who goes 2, 3, 4 or 5. I say this, if you want to change the government, you have to put the government last. The only exception is that you put the people who could help them become the government, that being the Greens, last. That is the only option that can exist for Queensland, and the polls are showing that you are ready to flush this mob. We've got less than a month. The quiet Queenslander can and will do it. Flush this mob. I'll give you the domestos to get rid of the stain. Matt Canavan is a Queensland Senator who, of course, lives in Rockhampton and is all about regional Queensland. And right now he is in Canberra. Thanks for joining us on a Monday, Matt. Matt, let's talk about this here. The regions are moving. It might only be a point, but some of those seats, particularly around Townsville, they are razor thin. And a couple of seats here, a couple of seats there, they can't be saved by the Greens.
Your analysis is spot on, Paul. The election will be won or lost in North Queensland. You can tell where a battle will be fought by where the generals are trying to line up their troops, where they're trying to choose the ground to fight the battles. And the last couple of weeks, both the Labor Premier Annastacia Palaszczuk and Deb Frecklington have spent their time in North Queensland. We saw the spectacle last week of Annastacia Palaszczuk trying to convince us all that she actually supports the coal mining industry. 3 years ago, you might recall, Paul, that Annastacia Palaszczuk ditched a deal with Adani to bring jobs to Queensland because her partner at the time had some kind of cockamamie conflict of interest. She invented something to do a deal with the Greens. And then last week, she actually did a deal with Adani. She did a deal with Adani. And it shows how desperate the Labor Party is now to try and convince everybody at the last minute they actually support the coal industry and the jobs it provides. But I don't think anybody's going to be fooled in North Queensland. We didn't come down the last shower, and we know this government has done nothing for years, as you said, created a paltry 170-odd jobs, and they can't be trusted to create jobs in the future.